You have to start somewhere, whether it's with one SBU, whether it's with one project, whether it's one mind, one executive, one leader. Doesn't matter where you start. You have to get one person on board. That's always my first advice to everyone.
Welcome to Just a Girl in Construction. This is the podcast for the hardworking construction workers who want to drop the tool belt and build the skills to move into a management position. If you're an on site construction worker seeking a management position, then this podcast is for you. My guest today is Joshua Weyand with Suffolk Construction, where he is the Director of Emerging Tech. Today, we will be leaning on the experience of this solutions architect and detailing how we can integrate technology into the growth of companies with practical, scalable, and impactful solutions that solve everyday problems for the construction industry. And who knows, we might even learn a little bit about craft beer. So, with that, I would like to introduce Joshua Weyand. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I love the show, and I love the message you're bringing.
Well, let's take a minute and just step back a little bit because I'm going to be leaning on you for being my technology guru because you know it's the hot topic of the day. But before we do that, how would you describe the then versus now in terms of how construction crews used to operate without tech versus how we're experiencing it in today's workforce?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Then is hard for me to put full grasp on. I didn't get into construction until about 2012 or so. But based off my perception, based off what people are saying, it was a lot of paper. It was a lot of mail. It was a lot of fax machines and running to and fro and to and yelling at the top of your lungs. And there's still a lot of yelling at the top of your lungs, but there's a lot of cloud-based solutions now that are offering ways to streamline work, whether it's administrative or even physical. So it makes it to where it's a little bit more appealing from an administrative standpoint. Construction, of course, being deceptively very administrative heavy. So anytime we can get people away from the computer and back in the field, that's considered a win for me.
Well, I love that, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there who love hearing that as well. But I think that, it really starts with understanding that we've had technology and AI in construction for a long time. It's just that maybe we didn't know how to effectively or efficiently use it, and now with some of the newer technologies and innovations, it's really bringing to light how we can use this in the construction industry. But it's been used in a lot of other industries, up to this point. We've been a little bit slow to change into the construction industry. So, the way that I see it is if we can introduce things in kind of a step by step and gather some confidence in how we're using it, people tend to accept it a little bit better. But how are you seeing it being introduced into the construction industry? And what are some ways that we can get people to start using it and build that confidence?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me and myself, the way that I got into construction technology and evaluating solutions was purely just by being fed up. I had just kind of said there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. And eventually, after doing the same thing about 100 times, I put my foot down and tried to find a better way. So ultimately, it's finding folks who are disgruntled, willing to change, willing to see what the other side would be, and just being receptive. And if you can lean on those, champions, we'll call them, it makes things a lot easier. But at a high level, it's also important to start building a culture and getting a culture around continuous improvement. When you go from job to job and you're doing the exact same thing and the exact same thing, whether it's buyout or closeout, you ultimately get into a routine. And so those routines can be dangerous, right? We all know that. But ultimately, if you're not getting anything new into your infrastructure, into your culture, into your company from the outside, you're not seeing what other companies are doing. It's pretty hard. And construction is a unique industry because a lot of what we do isn't being publicized and blasted from the hilltops. CNBC isn't covering us right now on national television. So yeah. perception is oftentimes reality, right? So if you are just a regular project engineer, you're working at a job site, you only know your environment. You only know your trade partners, what you're doing, what maybe your neighboring projects are doing. And so if they're doing something innovative, how are you supposed to know if there's no communication, even within your own company?
Competition is tough, you know, I wanna make sure I keep the secrets close to my chest. I don't wanna
Oh
tell
yeah,
everybody else what's going on out there, right?
that too. Yeah, that's a good part too. And so it's just how, as much as you can be a sponge, whether it's internally or externally. I think that's where the crux lies.
So how does that look differently from on-site individuals to those who are maybe in the office?
It's just different levels of perception, right? Sometimes the project manager may have multiple jobs. Sometimes they may just have one, and same with being in the field. Maybe you're on the road constantly. I find that a lot of trades actually have some awesome insight because they're going from project to project, from general contractor to general contractor, and then project type to project type. So they're getting a lot of different perceptions, and even within their own companies, which is always great because I love to see, hey, what are you doing? What are you seeing in the industry, and just getting their perception because again, they're touching way more, they're seeing way more than someone like myself at a general contractor. And but going back to your ask about that office and field level difference, I would say it's just about level administrative effort. Obviously, the office workers having a lot more administrative effort than those that are in the field.
You know, the way that I see it sometimes is that people believe that just because you're in the office, you may have more access to computers and therefore your intimidation of computers and technology is maybe a little bit less. And so you tend to integrate it more in the work that you're doing. But there's a lot of opportunities in the field that we're starting to see that really could take advantage of some of this technology. And how do we encourage those individuals on the job site to understand how to be able to use these as a tool and not be worried about having to be the one to write the software for the robotics that are getting ready to put the veneer up on the side of the building or lay out a interior wall?
Yeah, it's a valid question. There are a multitude of softwares and technologies out there, some of which are almost ready outside of the box. There's minimal effort to deploy or leverage, and some to your point, you are going to have to do that development, do that coding, and that's not for everybody. So my way I would encourage people is to just look to see what's out there. If you don't have the time to do it, maybe find an ally internally that is someone you can lean on to help you do that research. Maybe they're in IT, maybe they're in BIM or VDC, maybe they're in emerging technologies like myself. But there's always someone in your company that's likely done what you're trying to do. If so, just ask the question. Someone from the field reaches out to me. It's just the greatest thing ever because I know that I have an ally. I have someone that wants to do something innovative and unique. How can I take advantage of that?
So I'm sure that you've seen a lot of situations where many veteran workers are hesitant to adopt any new technology because it feels like it's replacing craftsmanship. So how do you build a bridge between the respect of old school skill sets and the modern digital tools that you're introducing?
The most impactful thing you could possibly do is make people feel safe, specifically around like from a psychological perspective. People are going to be willing to learn and willing to change if their concerns are addressed. They feel like they're valued. They feel like they have a voice. They feel like whatever you're about to produce and give them and ask them to do, they can object to it. That's why it's such an important part from a safety perspective. If you're doing unsafe work, you have to be able to stop that work, and it's not any different with technology. We want people to be able to say, "Hey, this isn't working out." Because if it's not working out, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's find a better way. And oftentimes, what I perceive, again, I haven't been on the field in 3.5 years. What I perceive could oftentimes be wrong. And the last thing I'd want to do is ask someone to do something that I either I wouldn't do myself or do something that's not realistic. So give me that unique uh, uh, perspective that you have when you're in the field. Let me take advantage of that. Let me try to refine my process or my technology to make it even better, thanks to your feedback. And oftentimes, when you build that psychological safety, when people feel like they have a voice and that voice is considered, they are oftentimes receptive to wanting to jump in and try out that new thing. But you still have to sell. You still have to get people on board. You still have to try to upsell them to get the, steak fajitas. So it's always difficult, but it's a challenge I love.
So, one of the things that we do in construction management online is we help people recognize that the skills that they work on in everyday life are transitional into construction management tasks. And so, just like you talked about in understanding that it's not just a skill that you would use in technology, but we also use it when we're looking at estimating or we're looking at scheduling and understanding that how you input information is going to result in the output of what it is that you're creating. And so, I think sometimes just using the word technology has a tendency to really just send the goosebumps up on people and make them cringeworthy of having to deal with this technology that we have out on the job sites. But with technology and how it's changed how we're building things these days, um, how do you see it evolving even more in the future?
I would say that we're going to see with AI and just how administratively heavy AI is, that it's going to see a reduction in workforce, particularly in overhead with uh, just job site trailers. They'll probably be a little bit more streamlined, a little bit smaller, but only because a lot of the work that would be done normally may be automated to some fashion. We're seeing right now a lot of technology around submittal reviews and RFIs and just being able to create things via agents in a way that would be significantly faster than a standard workflow. So instead of two project engineers, you may just have one. Maybe that other project engineer is either upskilling and spending time on the bench, or they're going into a different project, learning something a little bit new. So it's going to open up more width in the construction space. If obviously if overheads are shrinking, then you're going to start to see more and more jobs being taken on. Uh, Obviously, right now, construction suffering from a labor shortage. So the more that we can get people out and about and make the most out of their time, it's going to help everyone else in construction out. So that's where I see it most right now from an administration standpoint. In the field, you're going to start to see things that what we call the 3D, the 3Ds, dull, dirty, and dangerous, start to become there's going to be again a pretty big uplift in robotics in those spaces. So robotic layout is obviously very popular right now, but we're going to start seeing even more things. Safety rails being installed by robots, robotic hoists, certain things like moving materials around the job site, picking up trash around the job site. All those again 3Ds types of things are going to start getting automated, and that is the hardest thing to do from a buy-in standpoint. No one wants to see what they're doing taken over by a robot, including myself. But ultimately, the last thing we want is for someone who's unbelievably talented to be looking for a conduit. You need to be installing the conduits, not looking for them. We got to find a way to be a little bit more streamlined. That's the end goal.
What I'm hearing, though, are some problems that we have sometimes in the construction industry of the disconnects and recognizing that. Again, there's a lot of people worried about losing their job because they don't want to lose it to robotics or something in that manner. But also, that a small or mid-sized company who might not be able to afford a $600,000 robotic piece of equipment, is not or is going to be competitive against larger firms who are getting those kind of jobs. And so how do you introduce this new technology into these different levels of construction diversity that we have in our industry?
It's a great question. Ultimately, I find that mid-sized contractors have the most room for potential, whether that potential be through robotics, through the potential be through AI, just because you have a small, um, we'll call it discretionary fund for technology in comparison to larger companies. But also, it's wildly competitive in that mid contractor space. So anytime you can get operational efficiency at that level and be able to beat out your opponents, you're going to see that boost. And ultimately, you can snowball and you can go the right way. Part of that's just having a good technology strategy on early. I had a webinar about 2 weeks ago where we talked about data strategy, how important it is from a data perspective. But the time to be doing these things is when you're that early to mid-sized contractor, not when you're the late to big contractor, because you're going to start snowballing. Once you have a good technology piece in place, once you have a good data part in place, everything becomes a little bit easier as you start taking on more and more But at that base, again, if that foundation's a little rocky, it's not great, you're going to start to see it crumble. So my advice to those in that mid-size range is be willing to spend time and money on that innovation piece and on that technology piece, because it will pay dividends down the line, especially if you get your ducks in a row from a strategy standpoint. But to be able to catch up to the bigger players, I would just say that you know your businesses better than I do, and ultimately, while there's so much technology out there, make sure that strategy aligns to what you're already good at. There's great technology out there that may be specific to manufacturing work, may be specific to mission critical. Find and lean into your niche, and then find success there.
But how does a company do that? Because I could see them knowing how to buy a software and that this software is going to take care of, your HR things, or this software is going to take care of your estimating program. But to be able to understand how to implement it into workflow means that you also have to understand workflow, and that you have to understand all of the nuances that it takes to be able to run your business. And many times in those small, mid-sized companies, they're learning that experience and that knowledge in the moment, which sometimes is too late. And we know that it could be one issue that could end up putting our company under. But how does it actually get implemented for a small to mid-sized company? Is there a position or a role that we need to be looking for, a certain type of consultant who's going to help us? How does that work?
Yeah, there's so many wonderful construction technology consultants out there that have done technology piloting and implementation and onboarding, and that can walk you through that if you're at that mid-sized level and you're nervous to take that jump. Oftentimes, I find that a lot of these things get thrusted upon maybe a VDC director or a IT director to figure out, even if it may be a little out of scope for them. And so there's opportunity for someone to grow and expand their skill set. But I would say that the big challenge that I often see is that there is we'll call it just um, piloting expertise, where I have the ability to go to any job I want, be able to try out any piece of technology I want within reason, and be able to come up with a business plan around it, scale. Again, that's a full-time job I have the luxury of having. But if you're at the mid-sized level, you may not be able to have someone at that full-time level. So what I would say is try to find someone that has resources, which is hard because everyone in construction I find is resource constrained. And otherwise, go the consultant route there. Again, there's so many wonderful construction technology consultants out there that can help you grow, but it's obviously nerve-wracking and dangerous. If you make the wrong call, if you try to implement something too early, if you miss the ball, you're talking about a lot of loss, and then there's obviously sunk costs, and you may be stuck with something you don't like. I think that I really resonated. Again, I've never worked for a mid-sized contractor, but what I will say is that whenever I was doing a presentation, at the end, someone had asked, "Hey, I have bought an enterprise software about 3 months ago. No one's using it. I don't know what to do." And I was like, "Man, that is rough." So you're 3 months into an agreement. You can't back out now. No one's using it. How do you scale? And you have to start somewhere, whether it's with one SBU, whether it's with one project, whether it's one mind, one executive, one leader. Doesn't matter where you start. You have to get one person on board. That's always my first advice to everyone. And from there, you can snowball. There's all sorts of things you can do, whether they're lunch and learns, whether they're newsletters, whether they're, I mean, for me, I have to drive to a job site, buy them donuts to get them to sit down and talk to me about technology. So being able to do it at a mid-sized company is probably less you got to spend when you buy donuts. So something to consider.
No, I appreciate that, and everybody loves a good maple donut. I know I do. So, with that, you do have a title or a position in your company that's been designated specifically for this. And so, how did your company go about creating that opportunity within their company? And how long has it been in existence? And when did they foresee needing a position like this?
It's existed in a lot of different flavors and titles, and some slight changes in the actual title. What I will say is that whenever I first got into my role, it was a lot different than when I was now. It was more on the R&D style, be able to do whatever you want within reason kind of perception. And ultimately, what we started doing was trying out technology, trying to find ways to be better and be more efficient and effective in a wildly diverse market that is Dallas, Texas. And at which point, once we started seeing technology succeed, it was all about telling that story and getting people on board and getting the entire South Central region bought into that idea. And there was this natural swell moment where the technology was performing well, project teams were bought in, and other regions were trying to figure out where to go and how to get involved. And at which point, I started uh, speaking more with the folks at corporate, and then eventually getting into the role I am in now. So same title, but a little bit more different, just more focused on other regions and to some extent the rest of the company. And what I'll say is that um, again, while the role existed, it didn't. I would say fully exist until about 2018 when we started to see more technologies really start to swell in construction, like drones, 360 cameras, and early stage RPAs and robotic process automation. When we started to see that big shift, and then of course there was the COVID downturn. Everyone was trying to find out how do we stay agile? How do we look around corners when there's a ship that blocks the Suez Canal for what was it, like 2 months? How do we stop that? Can we predict that and be more agile in the market? And anytime there's ever something really, really drastic happening in the market, people try to find ways to be more innovative. We saw that with in the early 2000s with the housing crash. We saw that during the Great Recession. We saw that during COVID. That people were trying to iterate and continue to be better. And it's not that we need tragedies in construction to be better. What I will say is people start to listen to the hey, what if we did X, Y, and Z a little bit more when your company's on the line. I'll say so. And myself and a lot of the other folks that are in construction technology started to see more positions open up right around the end of COVID that were more geared towards that piloting and scaling piece. How do we get operational standardization? How do we build data warehouses and data lakes and be more intelligent from a business perspective? That's why I saw the big shift in not only the industry, but also within Suffolk.
Yeah, and you talk about a lot of these different topics on LinkedIn. So I definitely would love for the community to follow and subscribe to your profile in order to be able to learn more about some of these. And I'm assuming that you would be able to refer them to any consultants who might be able to help them figure out how to implement this into their workflow.
Without a doubt, yeah. Good friends with a lot of consultants, happy to help out, depending on your size, depending on your range, willing to do what I can to help you succeed.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And I just want to, talk a little bit more about the different types of career opportunities that you see coming about in this new realm of innovation. I know that, you mentioned drones, and everyone loves to be able to, organize and fly a drone over a beautiful construction project. But I know data collection and being able to analyze data is very important. And so, what are some different roles that you've seen really evolve out of this technology piece?
There's several big buckets that I'll go into. Field engineering being the most obvious. Engineering's been around for a long time, but with better robotic toll stations going out there, laser scanners, um, what they call slam scanning, and drones. There's so much technology that needs to be operated from the field perspective.
I'm sorry for interrupting you for a second because I just know that field engineer to a lot of people means a lot of different things.
So many different things.
And so I just want to make sure, first off, it's not an engineer. So everybody can, think that you don't have to go to school in order to be able to be a field engineer. Obviously, the more school, the more construction experience you have, the better. But what we're talking about is building that knowledge in the field and being able to support those that are in field versus maybe a project engineer who would be more focused in the office management side of things. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's just all of these titles sometimes can get a little broad. And so people have difficulty transitioning into what career they want to look at because they're not sure of the true definition of it.
Yeah, field engineering, to your point, very, very broad. It's hard because again, it could be as simple as an operator just doing that data collection piece. It could be someone that's driving end to end. So actually has the laser scanner going out there doing the collection, then maybe doing a scan to BIM, so doing that full workflow, or they're just doing that data collection piece. And then obviously the operator piece who's just doing the operation. There's also what we're seeing, some sort of shared business model where you have one person whose sole job it is to divvy out equipment to projects, and that project will run the equipment, or they're divvying out operators to different projects and sending them out with a piece of field equipment, and then maybe billing back that job based off of an hourly rate. So you're seeing some different things there, or sorry, we're seeing some different things there. On the BEM and VDC side, there is a lot of technology out there that's looking to do uh, more of that automation style work inside of VDC and BEM. Be able to do, I mean, right now we can do automated clash detection, right? But actually bring in an AI level intelligence in there. Other tools other than Autodesk exist out there. How do you find them? How do you validate them? How do you figure out what's better? And then also bring in the collaborative piece, being able to bring in more than just your team or just your detailers into one space to be able to work. So a lot of technologies around BIM to VDC, and then besides that, just general solutions architecture. There are lots of opportunities that are ripe within construction for innovation, whether it is job site accounting, whether it is safety, whether it is quality. These are all different SBUs that are owned within maybe your safety or quality team. But to be able to actually take a step back and find ways to attack those different SBUs from an innovation perspective does require some bandwidth. But there's again, whether it's HR, whether it's accounting, there's opportunities, and we're seeing those happen either via a director of construction technology, director of emerging technology, director of innovation, something along those lines. That's just has a little bit more bandwidth from an operational perspective to attack those different SBUs. We'll call.
Sometimes when a company looks at investing in software, they'll spend a lot of money and they end up getting tied to that software because there's no financial opportunity to move away from it. And so even though there's, all these squirrels out there and this looks good and that looks good, but we don't know how it collaborates, how hard or easy is it to integrate technology and be able to change out because it changes so quickly? So how can we really make a decision about what we want to do or where we want to go when it's already changed?
It's wildly hard. And if you're about to switch and you're about to leave, oftentimes the company you're switching or leaving to is going to throw everything at you to get you on board. And we're sorry, we'll come back, we'll do X, Y, and Z. I find that before you meet with the company, you oftentimes have the most power. So if there's something out there that you're trying to accomplish from we'll just call it project management system solution standpoint. There are so many project management solutions out there. How do you know what's best for your company? It's hard because it's very commoditized. It's changing all the time. But it's even more difficult because when you talk about swapping, whether it's 5 or 150 projects over to a different project management software, you're talking about a lot of pain. You're talking about a lot of people that are going to be upset, who are going to be disgruntled. Workflows are going to change. You're going to probably lack product parity. Some of the things that you're used to aren't going to be in this new product. There's going to be some give and take. But what I will say is that if you have this tech strategy in mind, you know what your end goal is going to be, then lean into that and pull off that band-aid when you're at that mid-size versus being at that larger size. And what I will say is that if you are able to do that, if you are able to make that jump and you are able to make that standardization piece happen on this new platform, you're going to start seeing some much larger returns from your investment. That may not be apparent now, but it will be apparent maybe once you develop more of a data strategy. Oftentimes, what I see in construction is that there's just a lack of standardization, whether it's project management systems, even in the top 25, I'm aware of many different general contractors who don't standardize their project management system. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to again shift the balance, get people upset, but you have to show them the value, make sure they understand why it's happening, what we're trying to achieve, get them on board with that vision. And once you do that, once you're able to make that change, you start to see people buy into that dream. But it's hard to quantify before you make that move if it's worth it or not. That's why it's always better to start with the end goal and work backwards. What integrations do I want to have? What HR system do I imagine myself having 5 years from now? What accounting system do I imagine myself having 5 years from now? Does it integrate with that? Those would be the first kind of questions I would ask. And then also, are there any new business needs that I can foresee happening, whether it's AI, whether it's machine learning or RPAs, and does that system support it? And once you start from that end and work backwards, you'll get your answer. It's just going to be hard because again, there's so many tools out there. Some of them do this, some of them don't do that. There's not really a good consumer's report for project management software. And I know just picking on project management software, but it could be anything. So makes it to where it's a little difficult, and obviously there's some risk.
Yeah, well, I love that point though, and it's such a great point because we spend so much time focusing on tangibles in the construction industry. And yet when we go to create estimates, we know the most impactful thing to our estimates is outside influences and things that we can't see and the maybes and the unforeseen conditions that might hit us. And so having a realization and an appreciation for how those intangible things impact us, you would want to believe that we would be a little bit more open to understanding and being able to see through the eyes of people who already know how technology is taking advantage, that we would be able to believe what they say and be able to trust in what they are offering the construction industry.
It's hard because they're the subject matter experts. They know the estimating and scheduling and any other workflow that they're doing to a T. And I come in and I may not be the most keen with estimating or scheduling or whatever it is. So the most important thing you can do is a good, lengthy business requirements dive. What are all the things? Can I shadow you for a day? uh, you click over there, okay, and you're taking notes as to workflows and steps, and making marks and being attentive and asking questions. If you do that piece, it makes any sort of switch you're going to be doing much easier when they know that you care and that they also know that you took the effort to take into consideration their concerns, what they're actively doing every single day before making a switch like that.
So in construction management online, we don't have a lot of technology teaching courses. We definitely make sure that we're teaching the right mindset to get everyone ready for it, and have introduced Chat GPT in order to really help superintendents understand how they could learn efficiency and productivity in their daily activities just by having something that is helping them with their grammar, spelling, and organizing their ideas in a daily report or meeting minutes. But how do you see the industry really changing and moving forward and implementing this in a way that just changes the future and how we look at construction?
Anything from a technology perspective that's just going to reflavor what you're already doing is going to see wild success. Superintendents are already speaking like caveman, not using the best grammar. Maybe it's audio notes, maybe it's quick hand notes, maybe it's a blurry photo. So where AI is really coming in right now is being able to take audio that you're speaking and maybe turn it into a report or a blurry photo and be able to upscale it and be able to recognize what's in that photo and then be able to assign that metadata to that photo. So when you type in the word crane, the photo that you had with the word with picture crane pops up. Or from a photo perspective, if you take a picture of an invoice and it's scanning that invoice and being able to just quickly pull that information and send it to your accounting team. These are technologies that are already happening, but they're already doing well because they're doing exactly what you were already doing, listening to you, writing down and expanding on what you're saying, and looking at photos that you're producing. So there's not a workflow difference. And that, in my mind, any technology that's not going to create a substantial workflow difference is going to have creator buy-in from the disgruntled people out there who may not be the best at embracing change. But AI, obviously very important, prompting very important. It's challenging because ChatGPT is pretty reliant on what's available from an external perspective, and oftentimes, if you ask it a construction-related question, it's likely gonna be wrong, and that I'll call it wrongness, even though that's not a word. That, level of accuracy depends on what scope you're looking at too, whether it's something very specific, maybe it's just waterproofing, or maybe something very broad like civil construction and what how digitized that industry is. Oftentimes, commercial construction, to your point, no one wants to reveal their secrets. They're holding on to that. So the big thing that we're seeing a big shift in is a lot of companies creating their own models off of their own data, whether it's through a partner like Microsoft Copilot or Trunk Tools or Procore Copilot, or they're leveraging something via an API and they're creating it themselves. And props to them if they're doing that because that's a lot of work. So that's what we're seeing a lot. Again, it's just letting people have a conversation with their data, and more importantly, trying not to disrupt their normal workflow.
Well, I know that you're a passionate advocate for this and that you have a couple of events that are coming up that you are a part of, one that you're going to be a keynote speaker at. So, can you tell our audience where they can expect to find you and what exciting things you have going on, and whether or not there's a website link that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, anyone that wants to connect with me, more than happy to connect on LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to find me. I like to imagine myself in a Faraday cage. As much as I love technology, you will not find me on any other social media at all. I promise. If you meet me in real life, I'm down to earth. I came from the field and wound up here through a weird series of events. But I love this space, and I'm happy to elevate other folks in this space as well. Just because we're competitors doesn't mean that we can't find ways to help each other be better. So.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on and elevating our community and being part of Just a Girl in Construction. Technology is such a big topic right now, and we just want to make sure that people are understanding that it is a tool. It's a tool that is used for our efficiency and our productivity. It's not really here to take away from what it is that we want to get done with these big, beautiful projects. So, with that, thank you, Joshua, so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.